this is more of an invasion, isn't it? I mean, honestly, I don't really think that there are any significant percentage of Americans who condone violence against ICE, who want open borders, who think that the National Guard going into cities that are wrapped with crime, that there's a problem with that. These are our foreign enemies who are attacking us.
Yeah, it is. It's our foreign enemies who are attacking us, and it's really sad because Joe Biden is the one that let him into the country. And I understand this man's background, and I understand also that he had worked for, the government side by side with U.S. troops over in Afghanistan. But there's a reason that we ended up having to have what we called our Guardian Angel program over inside of Afghanistan, where we would have people that, U.S. soldiers that just made sure that we didn't get shot in our back while we were standing there. I've talked to and interviewed a lot of the soldiers that were on the ground over during that withdrawal from Afghanistan on the ground at HKIA. It is shocking to hear some of their stories and what they'll tell you. They'll tell you that they got little to no training on screening the actual paperwork to let these people on the base, that the representatives from the Department of State that were on the ground would often come up to the gate and change the standards for what was coming through, that a lot of the paperwork was being photocopied. It's in foreign languages so that they didn't, who's going to know what it is that they're looking at? Just all sorts of problems. And so I was looking at Secretary Mayorkas. He was being interviewed by Lindsey Graham for a congressional inquiry. And they asked Mayorkas, they asked him, can you guarantee that 100% of those people were actually vetted? And after a 3-minute of just grind session against Mayorkas, he finally came out and said, you know what, I can't speak to that. Because they didn't vet everybody, Jake. And so we have people that came to this country, God only knows what they're tied to. And it's upsetting, it's absolutely upsetting to see this stuff happening here on American soil. My hearts and prayers go out to their families.
Yeah, it's not an isolated incident. We also had an incident in Texas.
That's right.
Where an Afghan national was arrested who had been openly plotting to kill, I believe it was National Guard troops, but at least American troops in some form. And, Matt, what this reminds me of is one of my biggest pet peeves is when people talk about the Lebanese Civil War. For those of you watching don't know what I'm talking about. The 1970s, they had an Islamist versus more secular civil war in Lebanon. It wasn't a civil war. It was an invasion. There were tens of thousands of Palestinian terrorists who poured into Lebanon after they were kicked out of Jordan by King Hussein in something called Black September. In your case, in our case, as you pointed out, we had our borders opened. I don't think that this was a coincidence. I think that there were different payoffs and different reasons that the Biden administration, for every group that came in, whether it was Venezuelans, whether it was the usual garden variety, other people from Central America, or people from Afghanistan, or even China. I think that there were different payoffs and different price points, frankly.
Yeah, I think that I know I'm not the only one that's spoken about this, but Chinese miners being over inside of Afghanistan and U.S. troops guarding Chinese miners, while they're over in Afghanistan, actually escorting them around the country. As a matter of fact, I know I'm not the only person that spoke about that. I think it's kind of odd that, the last flight that Joe Biden took as vice president aboard Air Force Two was Hunter Biden landing over inside of China. And Joe, when questioned about it, has no idea what his crackhead son was up to running around over inside of China. And then after we withdraw from Afghanistan, that the first country to recognize Afghanistan officially was China, right? And none of these things are coincidences in my mind, Jake. None.